Hello, everybody.
To all of you American girls, it's sad to imagine a world without you.
Hi, this is Media Talk with
Abby.
and Josie.
Today we want to talk about how media has affected our generation since 2020 and the increase of it that we've had since going into COVID.
I think before the media affected me, it was my older cousins, because before I downloaded any social media or even had access to like a screen, I was at my summer lake house with a 15-year-old girl doing TikTok dances in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first for me, because they would quote things that I had never heard of and sing songs that I had never known.
Yeah. It was
And
still
then they
very
would
foreign.
it would yeah, absolutely, because we were young.
Yeah.
We were young. But I mean, once you're introduced to it, it's kind of hard to be confused by it. It's kind of hard to
Definitely.
get lost
Yeah.
in it. So it was at first it was curiosity, definitely.
Yeah. I
Just
think,
with people around me.
yeah, when I was younger, I feel like I spent a lot more time outside before COVID hit and then after COVID hit and everybody was supposed to stay inside. I think that's really when it started to take effect on me, especially with like having an unlimited amount of media and unrestricted access to the internet. And I feel
Yeah.
like before that I was definitely a lot more social. I was outside a lot more. But I think that was also like a big part of childhood before like
Absolutely.
media set in. And then of course COVID hit and it definitely changed.
Yeah, definitely. I hear that entirely. Like, I had friends' houses that I would like walk to.
Yeah.
And then I started talking to them over Discord.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Because I think it started like that. You start, you're outside all the time, and then you're in the house because of some random virus.
Yeah.
And then you're socializing in a different way
Yeah.
over these apps that you downloaded.
Yeah. And I think that was definitely a very global wide thing for all kids our age around that time is going from walking to your friends' houses, spending time outside of school with your friends, being outside in general to only being able to talk to them online. And I feel like before we had phones, because a lot of us went into COVID during fourth, fifth grade, especially kids in our generation, we didn't have phones yet, and so you were speaking to your friends through like Google Docs and through like
I
school
remember
stuff,
this.
yeah. And then like finally getting phones because you're home all the time and you need a way to speak with your friends. And I think that's when all of the exposure to media really set in, and I think that's what really started to affect us.
Absolutely. I remember like so much of my introduction to it was absolutely curiosity, but also just people showing me.
Yeah.
Like, I had a friend that was 2 years older than me. She
Yeah.
lived in my neighborhood. And then I got a phone, and then we started texting instead
Yeah.
of talking because we couldn't see each other anymore.
Yeah.
And she would just tell me about all of the things that she was looking at and
Yeah.
introduced to, and then I was introduced to.
And with that, I feel like as we started to get more in tune with having a phone and having media, especially since we were inside all the time, that's how we started to socialize and that's how we started to connect with people.
That's how we started to get used to it.
Yeah, and that's where you started, I mean, depending on the side of media you were on and the amount of like internet access you had, it really messed with how you socialized with people because that's when I started like chatting with people online.
Mhm.
That's when like
That's when it gets a
Discord
little bit
came in.
dangerous.
Yeah, that's when Discord came in and having those online friends. And I mean, media was how we talked with people, especially
Exactly.
with TikTok, and that's just how we socialized because we couldn't go outside. And I
Yeah.
feel like w- that's where sometimes parents get a little confused because they're like, "Oh, you're on your phones too much." Like I was a teenager once, and they're like, "I know how it is." But I feel like it's very different for us since
Absolutely.
it was the only form of communication that we had.
It was what we had access to.
Yeah, for several years.
Yeah, and then when we went back to school, and then we weren't like that anymore, and we
Yeah.
just had like a year of our
Yeah.
developmental lives chatting with people online.
Yeah.
Like, one of arguably the biggest developmental pieces of our childhood. The switch from being, single digits to double
Yeah.
digits, and then
Yeah.
you're 11, and then you're 12, and then you're back at school.
Yeah.
Then we kind of didn't fully know what to do, and then I
Yeah.
think there was like huge divide
There
of
was.
people because there was such a big divide in what media was and what was out there
Yeah,
and what
and
people
what
were accessing.
yeah, what we saw and the different sides of the media that we were on, because there were the kids that pretty much stayed in normal areas of the media, and it was like the TikTok dances. You had Charlie D'Amelio, and there was that side, and then there was, I mean, quote unquote weird kid TikTok. That's where all of the anime and the online friends and the Discord talks, and that definitely set a divide depending on the side of media that you're on. And so going back to school, there was definitely a big social valley between the two sections of us.
Yeah. I think didn't just affect, our personalities, but I mean, even our social
Yeah.
like our physical appearance. Like
Yeah.
that's where styles started to
Yeah.
emerge. And even just in middle school, of course, styles will emerge. I think that the media absolutely had an effect on that.
Yeah.
And then people would literally divide into our groups. We had our people, the quote unquote weird kids. And I feel like there was so much more of a community of
Yeah.
weird kids than there was on just, if you were to go buy a fresh new phone and then download TikTok on it.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like now everybody's pretty much uniform onto the same kinds of media that we're seeing today, and everybody's kind of on one side. But I feel like definitely back in 2020, you weren't afraid to express yourself
mhm.
on the internet
It was
because
easier.
it was a lot easier, and you weren't afraid to express yourself and be who you were. And then going back to school and being on different social sides of the internet and going back to school and going from not being afraid to express yourself to being kind of bullied by the kids that
Yeah.
were on the more quote unquote normal side of the
Mhm.
internet. And especially with middle school being such a developmental time about who we are as a person, I feel like it definitely hurt a lot of kids.
Definitely. I mean, it changed the way that bullying looked because I mean, not only was it bullying of appearance, not only was it bullying of, you know, what bullying is usually for,
Yeah.
it started shifting to what you're interested in and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing, which is which is fully affected by the media that you're introduced to.
Yeah.
That's where that's where fandoms came in. That's where online communities came in regarding shows, books, movies, all that kind of stuff. That's how we were introduced to it, and then it became personality for a year, and then it was over, and then we kept it with us, and then we had to face the consequences.
Like going off of the big communities and being bullied in school to going home and having that online space where you're safe, I feel like that created community for kids, especially when we didn't really have anybody else in person, like the fandoms. Like I grew up with these shows, and they were considered weird at the time, and they're more mainstream now because everybody's become a little bit more accepting of it. But it was such a safe space for me because I grew up with these shows, started watching them in 2019, 2020, and then like I've grown up with them, and they've had
Yeah,
like such a large impact on me
absolutely.
and the community and the fandom that it had on the internet. Like I grew up with a lot of those people and the show itself, and it definitely made an impact on me and my personality.
Definitely, I completely agree. Like my favorite show went from being something nobody had ever heard of to the biggest show in the world. So that's us from an inside perspective. That's what it
Yeah.
looks like from the students. What do we think it looks like for the teachers?
I believe that there are some positive influences and there are some negative, well, not influences, but effects. They're much more connected, which is a good thing and can be a bad thing. As far as education wise goes, it can definitely be a distraction during the day.
So that's where the negative impacts kind of begin, I think. Of course, the media will have a negative impact. It's addicting. And I think that we're seeing that a little bit more,
In Gen Alpha today.
the younger kids, because they are given screens 10 times earlier than we were.
Yeah, I mean, the
I didn't have an
second
iPad until I was 8 or 9,
yeah, the
7,
second
8,
they
9.
are taken out into public, there's a screen put in front of them and they're relying on them
Exactly.
to basically be a normal human being today. I think you can definitely see that when you see them on the media, because
Mm.
now they're the kids that are going viral for the get readies with me
these kids that are seeing what girls 10 years older than them are doing, and
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, I need to be that
Yeah.
because I'm on the internet.
And I feel like they're losing the ancient texts of being a child.
Of being a kid, of course. Of course, they absolutely are. Because you'll go out into a restaurant and see 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and then they start crying or whining or
Yeah.
fussing. And the parent,
Throws a
with
screen.
half a mind, gives them a phone, and then that's what they do. They literally will not function without it.
Yeah.
If that's what they're introduced to at age 4, how can you expect them to have the attention span of a college student? When it comes to the women, the young girls, they are growing up so fast, and they're being influenced too. That's
Yeah.
what's happening. Through this, they're gaining attention, and that's what they want, but not in the way that they're receiving it.
No.
Aside from that, aside from the obvious terrible things happening, attention spans are just
Plummeting.
That's what I was gonna say. They are falling.
But there are so many negative effects of media, but there are also so many good ones, especially with today's
Yeah.
media.
So, what do we take away from this?
That media can have good and bad impacts.
Absolutely. I think that it's important for us to be individual. It is important to also have outlets to be that individual if you can't be that outside. And if you find that in media, that's amazing. But once social media is starting to have a negative impact on your mental health, or God forbid, the people around you, that's when it's a problem. And I think that I can speak for all of us when I say social media is all about regulation. It's important to have those happy bits, but it's also to be out there and to create something that isn't all online.
Here's your reminder to stay awesome, be unique, and be yourself. Thank you for listening to Media Talks.